deleted his account. So I want to see what the mindset's going to be like in the team and how well they perform as a unit.
Yeah, into picks and bans now. He's not the only one who expressed some frustration. Froggen mentioned, you know, their early game needs some work. They made some mistakes. MeetYourMakers, that might be their in here, but the really big question, the one that we really touched on earlier at the desk, but what we should go into again is, how is Corey going to shake up the dynamic on this team? Because this is a big change. Blizzard was actually one of the standout performers in not just the win, but in most of MeetYourMakers' games so far.
Yeah, and you know, when you look at Corey, I think it's a big upgrade to Blizzard. Blizzard lost all of his laning phases, especially in the CS department, fairly heavily. But Corey's going to have a much better mechanical understanding of the game. And the one thing that's going to stand out in my mind is what sort of performance he's going to give. In his statement that he put on the team's webpage, he actually said, my performance can look shaky. It might be difficult to see. Not always, because Corey has very bad late game decisions. He single-handedly lost games for the Super Hot Crew last year because of his decision making. So let's see if he's grown as a player since then and what sort of impact he's going to have against Froggen and the rest of Elements.
Yeah, interesting bans here. As of course, Caston was taken off the board first. We saw that. Also, Wicked Aurelia removed and LeBlanc. But on the other side, Elements have chosen to ban a couple of AD carries, Callista and Sivir. You know, I never noticed how similar they both kind of look in the face until just then. It's kind of cool.
In-depth, Pirate.
Yeah,
in-depth.
indeed.
The one thing I want to highlight, though, first pick Ahri, still sticking with a tradition that we actually seen from the first few games with Blizzard. He was also playing a significant amount of Ahri, then switched to Caston and LeBlanc. But Corey on Ahri, it's going back to a comfort pick, something that he has played a number of times in the past, and something that he'll be very used to playing on the stage, considering he's got all that LCS experience from last year.
And it's a double whammy, too, because not only, well, triple in that sense, because he's got the comfortability of it, he's also taking advantage of the fact that it's buffed on this patch with the removal of DFG. Froggen had played this to great success last week, and that is a massive takeaway from them. So kind of a no-brainer, and really are seeing the meta shift just a little bit here with the immediate pickup of mid laners blind. And over on Elements, they answer back with a Gnar and with, of course, for Reckless, the Graves pick.
So it's no doubt that Reckless is a Graves main. This is his 5th game in the Spring Split. This is his 5th performance on Graves. He's still doing well. GPM of 429. We were talking about Forgiven. Going into today's game, he had around 450 GPM, so still very, very high, but definitely his most preferred comfort pick.
Now, and this makes a lot of sense for MeetYourMakers' side because they go ahead and take away the Jarvan, denying the Narvan combo. Also, with a quick lock-in of Leona. So really a much quicker pick-ban phase for both these teams so far. Elements taking a little bit more time on their side, as you see Coach Mart talking in their ears, trying to get a fix on things.
And Horo's Jarvan, in my mind, is his best performing champion that he's got thus far. It is the one where NY have actually secured the win, but more importantly, if you contrast his Rengar and his Lee Sin, it's just been a little bit more lackluster. His Olaf in particular from week 1 was actually quite terrible. So we need to see if he can channel that good performance from last week again, because he's going to need a very strong synergy with Nisbet's Leona to find those picks onto Elements, to find those targets to shut down.
That's a hover we can talk about, but I don't think it's going to happen today. And you never know. Waiting for the time to tick down, they switch it over. And actually, immediate. Yeah, it looks like they locked in the Rengar pick for Shook.
So that's going to be an interesting one to see how well Shook can perform on Rengar. I mean, you go back to his jungle picks. He ran Aatrox. He's run Jarvan, he's run Rek'Sai, he's run Lee. This is his 5th different jungler. So whereas Reckless has played the same champion in 5 different games, we're seeing Shook trying out a number of different champions. I also get the feeling from Elements that they're still trying to find their groove, still trying to find the rhythm that actually works for them. So with that Rengar locked in, it's going to give them some choices. I like the Braum. You've got a very, very aggressive front line, but you don't have any magic damage. You've got practically full physical from Rengar, from Graves, from Gnar, but it is very aggressive. It's in your face.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting one from Elements for sure, as they take the full time of the countdown. This gives MeetYourMakers a little bit of time to think about it too. You can see Yamato Cannon in the profile there as the players communicate back and forth what they want to pick up in this final rotation for themselves. And it looks like that will be locked in. Oh, really quick MeetYourMakers moves. What?
So, okay, I'm not going to get too excited yet.
I am.
So we'll have to see how this works.
I think we might have to remake this one. Okay.
I'm not going to get too excited. There was a timer-related issue. We saw the countdown timer on the side of Elements after Braum and Rengar kept running down. even though they'd actually locked the champions in. So we're waiting from production to find out if this Katarina Invicta is legit. I don't think that it is.
That would be a really, really new strategy. It would top a lot of things we've seen today. But yeah, it looks like there should be the remake here. There was apparently an issue with all of that. But this gives us a little bit of time to think about that. So with the comps that were filled out so far.
What I will say, just very quickly, it was unfortunately a problem. There was a timer-related issue, so we are going to remake this lobby and actually get picks and bans going. I believe the Braum and Rengar were intentional, though, so we will get that clarification in a moment. But yeah, we'll see how this pans out. I think for this time being, you've just got, again, all sorts of engage, all sorts of tools to start fights. But on the side of that, Rengar, there was no movement speed increase. There was nothing to aid him. Just hearing now, Braum and Rengar are confirmed.
Okay.
So I just want to highlight that with Rengar being locked in with no additional speed boost, no move speed increase, unless he's paired with the likes of a Lulu, we've not seen great success in Europe with Rengars with no additional speed, with no additional engage tools.
Exactly. Now, and also this gives a lot of time with the way this pause work right now. It's going to give some time for them to maybe think about how they want to pair that one up. So the Braum is locked in already. There's still a few options on the board for elements, but getting back into picks and bans, we'll have to see what they do go for on the last side of MYM, because they definitely have some time to figure out what they want to fill out their roster with as well to deal with this heavy AD comp.
Yeah, my instinct is going to be Lulu. I think Froggen has played Lulu in the past. He's done pretty well on that champion. One game, despite it not showing great in the spring split last year, he did very well on that champion as well. Also even had the synergy with Wicked where they'd swap the champion. Both of them would play it. We are going to get this picks and bans started in a moment. The next question is, what is Mr. Rolls going to run? Kalista and Sivir were taken away. So those are targeted bans. Interesting that if you're thinking about running a Rengar, you ban the Sivir yourself. So that was an interesting choice on the side of elements. But what is Mr. Rolls going to run? Because he's not necessarily shown up here in the spring.
No, he's going to have to play something a little bit different now. You mentioned the Sivir was off the board. Of course, they played 3 of their games on that so far. The other one was Graves, which was, of course, taken away. And yeah, he's going to have to show some diversity. The Kalista off the board, I mean, the Kalista Braum would have been something to actually watch for, but they decided to go a little bit differently that way. I think Element's definitely covering their bases for the most part in picks and bans, but it's just still a little bit risky here. So we're going to have it all reset up until that point. Same bans, and up to that last MeetYourMakers rotation, the same picks.
Yes, so we'll see how MeetYourMakers decide to round out their composition. We're about to see them lock in Ahri, Jarvan, and Leona. So you've got pick potential, you've got engage. They now need to decide who are they putting top lane against Gnar, and who are they going to run as their AD carry. It'll be the first time we see Mr. Rolls on a new champion in the spring split. Because Graves taken away, as you've highlighted already. What will it be? Is it going to be something a bit more traditional? Tristana's disabled due to the rework. Could be a Lucian, could be a Caitlyn, could be a Jinx. You know, we've seen Jinx is run by several of the LCS teams as well. So choices available here for Mr. Rolls.
Yeah, and there's quite a front line here, especially, they don't have to do this, but most of the Rengars we have seen that have been successful in the European LCS so far have been those tank build Rengars. I don't think it's really going to happen in this particular composition just because they've got a front line already, but this would be a bit more conventional, so Mr. Rolls.
I forgot about Corki. I completely forgot about Corki. I think that's quite a smart lock-in, because again, you're giving yourself all of the different options. You can siege, you can poke, you can wave clear, you combine that with Orin, you've got a lot of things that you can do. But what does Mima want to run? He's run a number of different champions in that top lane, Renekton, Gnar, Rumble, and Irelia. Rumble's still available if they wanted to, and there's a lot of natural synergy with Corki, with Jarvan, with Leona.
And as soon as you call it, they're hovering that one right now. I got a few more seconds to lock it in. A lot of teams have been playing with interesting Gnar lane counters, but I don't think MeetYourMakers are going to go for anything too out of the ordinary. They do lock it in, and that leaves Elements with just the choice for Froggen. Where does he go, or what does he go, rather? You
know, you've got the option if you want to go team fight, maybe Orianna. If you want to go mid to late game and, you know, work with the kitty cat power up, you can go Lulu. If he wants to go Assassin, you could even look that route, but I don't think that's going to be the case because there's not a lot of magic damage. From listening to interviews and hearing how Froggen and Elements and Alliance last year would pick their team comps, they would have a checklist. Do we have wave clear? Do we have magic damage? Do we have physical damage? X, Y, Z. And the big checkbox that is missing is magic damage. So where is Froggen going to find it? Lulu's not the greatest damage threat.
Xerath's still available, however.
Exactly.
I mean, that would be a really good, because they have such a great backline, or sorry, front line that they can use to meat shield him away. There's also Lissandra, on the board as well. A little bit more all-in related, so kind of has a little bit of both worlds. And that's what they go with, locking that one in. So the comp's fleshed out here. And actually, I'm kind of hard-pressed to find who really came up with a better comp in this game.
I prefer MeetYourMakers. I think MeetYourMakers has got a lot more inbuilt synergy into their team composition. They work well together. You can have smaller groups of champions, 2s and 3s, that are going to do well. On the side of Elements, Shook is going to be completely reliant on his own boots and his teammates for engage. Yes, if he combos with Alessandra, you can use the Glacial Path as well as that Thrill of the Hunt to find a target. If he combos with Braum, you've got those synergies as well. But it's not quite as powerful as a Rengar with Lulu, a Rengar with a Janna, a Rengar with Sivir, for example. So I feel like for Elements, they're going to be relying on their individual ability to make the team comp work. Whereas on the side of MeetYourMakers, the synergy of the team comp can help make up for a slightly weaker individual play, if that makes sense. Because I think the synergy of the champions will work into their favor. Whether or not it plays out that way will remain to be seen, but I do think that MYM have a stronger team comp.
Well, they have the tools available to them to maybe make this play, but this is such a tall order. MeetYourMakers only picking up their first win at the end of last week. This is going to be a tough one. We'll see if they can fight off the Elements, but now you've seen their lineups. Let us know who you think is going to come out ahead. Go ahead and tweet us at LOL Esports using the hashtag MYMWin or ELWin, and we'll check on the results in just a minute. Loading up onto the Rift, the crowd letting out a cheer for the Elements and MeetYourMakers as they load up onto the Rift. Here we go. Game 3 of Week 3, starting up.
The thing that I really like about the Rumble into the Gnar matchup is just how Maima has the opportunity to bully Wicked around fairly early on. You can see he started with that cloth armor and 5 potions, so looking to sustain and looking to farm up. In addition, Maima's had good games and bad games over the 4 that he's played already. Rumble is a champion that is a little bit more forgiving. Even if you're bullied, even if you're camped in lane, it's your equalizer that's super important when you get to those dragon fights and tower challenges. So we'll see how Maima handles himself.
Corey being baited to kill that ward there. Froggen dares him. Yeah, this is really a big question mark for MeetYourMakers, is how well has the team readapted to Corey? He goes away for 2 weeks effectively, but as Deficio mentioned on the desk, are there perhaps any lingering trust issues here? Elements might have a couple of their own with the way they've described their own performance of late. However, both these teams starting off, well, a little bit more aggressively for Elements to place the deep ward on Rylez.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on how the team interacts with one another, but I think if you go back to last week where Cyanide was talking about some of the mid laners in Europe, and you know, he actually felt that there wasn't a massive amount of mid lane talent outside of the LCS who were of LCS quality. And he was a little bit negative about the potentials that could come in. You've got Corey, who has shown he can dance with the best of them. He had a pretty good showing statistically last year, and barring some decision-making problems, mechanically he's very sound. We need to see how he does against Froggen. He's actually has performed quite well in the Ahri versus Froggen matchup before, but it wasn't into Alessandra.
Yeah, standard lanes this time around, we'll see. And that is definitely a lane to keep an eye on in the middle. So Corey and Froggen will just trade a little bit of farm here. And this actually should be a fairly passive start. This is just the Element style in general. Slow and steady wins the game, or at least 3 out of 4 so far.
3 out of 4. I quite like that, actually.
Still a pretty good grade.
It is pretty good. And, you know, I went back and I rewatched the Elements games during the course of the week, and I still feel like they're trying to find a little bit of their identity. I still feel they're trying to figure out what works for them on the stage. Because what you play and how you practice at home and how you perform and play on this stage is vastly different. And, you know, sometimes Elements have had a good laning phase, poor mid-game. Poor laning phase, good mid-game. There's been mixtures of problems and highlights throughout all of the 4 matches they've played thus far. We'll see which ones come to light today.
Indeed we will, and you know, that you could think of that being a little bit troubling, just considering the majority of Elements have been together for quite some time. The change from Tabs to Reckless, a lot of people didn't see that as a massive change in style. Just, you know, a somewhat upgrade, a good player to a great player, a lot of people described it as. And how much really could it have changed the team mentality? It doesn't seem like much.
So risky there from Horo, but he does manage to get that full first clear. And we'll have to see
Didn't die.
Whether he can actually pick up that immediate tier 2 jungle item. Remember, 5.2, extra 100 gold, so Takes just a tad longer, but he manages to make it work.
Yeah, and there's not a whole lot of danger from being counter-ganked either. It's Rengar, not exactly the greatest action-prone jungler pre-level 6. I mean, we have seen a few changes to that mentality, especially in the case of Reignover, but Shook is a very different style of Rengar player.
Well, we'll find out how he delivers this time around. It's the first time we're seeing it in 2015. It's another champion that Shook is adding to his scoreboard, to the number of champions plays. Different champion every single game.
Yeah, there really has been a lot of champion diversity on Elements. That's definitely something to highlight, especially in that jungle.
And again, that backs up the point that I think they're trying to find their flavor. Reckless, look, 5 for 5 on Graves, so you know he's comfortable, and that's kind of just Reckless. If he fits a champion, he'll stick with it.
I mean, it's kind of Europe at this point with the AD carry.
That's
Graves
also true.
There.
And with the exception of that Kalista ban in this matchup, we've not seen a lot of Kalista. You go back to North America last Sunday, and I think they had 3 games back to back to back with the Kalista. Anyways, we'll see what happens now. You can see the Horo wants to try and make something happen, but he did get spotted out by Elements.
Yeah, Shook was just on his tail. Gonna ping him out as well, and everything settles a little bit more quietly too. Elements, this is a team that they might make some reactive plays to try to trip up MYM, but generally speaking, they're just that team that they prefer to farm over taking the opportunities.
Yeah, they really are. It's quite reminiscent of a Season 2 CLGEU, actually. Oh, I think Corey, if he gets caught, he's in trouble.
What a coincidence. There we go. Corey now. Charm is on. Wait a minute, though. Here comes Shook, and that's first blood going over to Froggen. So scratch what we said, because there was an opportunity straight for the taking.
So, well played. In picks and bans, we highlighted that, yes, there's no movement speed increase for Rengar, but with the Glacial Path from Lissandra, you're going to be able to cover a great amount of distance, root somebody, and Rengar can clean up. What we need to see is whether or not that's going to work once a few towers are down. Once Shook needs to run across half a lane or get through a jungle, when you're not in a static laning phase, can they still do it? And I think the possibility is, of course, yes, but they need to demonstrate it. We haven't really looked too much at the Mima versus Wicked lane. It looks to just be a farm fest for the time being, but Mima's finally got the opportunity to push the wave in, and Wicked is being bullied just a little bit. Trying to see how many potions left. Mima untouched. Not used a single one of those health pots, whereas Wicked, of course, he's got that one remaining and down to about half health.
Yeah, I like this. He just backs away the moment that Meganar comes out, and he's able to just give up a little bit of that farm. But he'll be back in action in just a moment. A big thing to highlight, though, is because of that pick that they got into Corey, Froggen has a massive CS lead. Well, pretty big at the very least to start this one off. And, you know, that and also in the bottom side, yeah, first blood, it's netted them a bit of a gold advantage. 1,000 here at 6.5.
Yeah, it's going to work in your favor, of course. You know, Mr. Riles and Nisbet playing a lot more defensively at level 1 and level 2. The Brown plus Graves really bullying them around. And something that you've also got to highlight. Graves gets really, really tanky from his passive, that True Grit. Then you're going to add the armor and ammo that Braum's going to give him from that, you know, helping his teammates' ability. That's actually a very beefy, tanky lane to try and deal with. As the game progresses, they're going to have a lot of innate free tankiness. You combo that with Gnar, naturally tanky, untargetableness that you can get from Lissandra. It's going to take a lot of focused, coordinated team fights for MeetYourMakers to get through everything that Elements can put on them during a team fight.
Yeah, that's always the danger, too. And the longer that the game gets, the scarier it gets as well for MeetYourMakers. So they're going to try and make some plays, or at least that would definitely be to their benefit to try to make some big plays early on. But so far, they haven't really found any openers, and Elements, they're not a team that gives away too many.
No, they really aren't. You know, Blizzard, who was playing for MYM in the last 2 weeks, fell 15 to 20 CS behind in the mid lane almost every single game. Corey's in the same position, albeit because of a gank. Not because he was just sitting 1v1 and not able to farm. So let's keep an eye on how that works out. But Elements, with a strong social vote, you know, to be expected somewhat in this matchup.
I would say it's honestly, it could have been even higher than this one. Elements heavy favorites in this matchup. MYM having, again, only just picked up their first win last week against the Copenhagen Wolves, but a lot of question marks surrounding the squad. Yes, Corey is down a Blizzard-esque amount of CS, but you're right, he was ganked early. He's been a little bit afraid to play against Froggen, who's a level up on him at this point. And interestingly enough, Froggen gone a very defensive path to start since that first item he picked up was the Negatron Cloak. Gonna get out an early one of those Abyssal Scepters.
Yeah, with the changes and DFG no longer available, it's actually not unheard of to go Abyssal Scepter first. You've got the time to build up your itemization, and it takes a little bit longer to hit 1 or 2 item breakpoints before you can really blow people up. Oh, double wards. In sync, synergy. And we'll see how Froggen decides to itemize. Is he going to finish like a Morellonomicon first? Is he going to go Abyssal first? I think it depends on how the next few minutes play out.
Yeah, they force Rallas and Nisbeth back in the bottom side too, as Reckless does hit his ultimate level. And decent CS leads across the board for the lanes of Elements, but Horo looking to try and maybe change that one. Wicked close to wandering in. Also Shook though, popped on the hunt. Looking for Corey, jump down, instant bola, and they've got him locked up and take him down yet again.
That was so well executed. Shook went for the flash engage. While flashing, threw out the baller strike, caught Corey in place. Corey didn't get a chance to flash, didn't get a chance to dash, and he was just taken out. Very well executed. Shook and Froggen working very well together in this middle lane.
Yeah, amazing synergy there, and they've picked a lead. They picked a lane, rather, I should say, to start to snowball, and they've really managed to make it work well. Now up in the top lane, Wicked gonna jump on a Mimer, gets a Gnar against the wall. This might force the flash out of him, not quite. And he has to back away nonetheless, so Elements starting to turn up the heat a little bit on this MYM squad.
Here comes Froggen though, trying to find Mimer. I actually managed to just get out of vision, so Shook, Froggen unable to find Mimer, but good lane dominance from Wicked, managing to get control, got himself 13 CS, he's actually turned it around. Mimer did not play particularly aggressively early on, and despite pushing the wave a little bit, didn't really get much pressure on Wicked. And, you know, just Elements off to a very good start. Nisbet's found Nef.
Yep, he has indeed, trying to do a little bit more damage down onto him, but he's actually not giving as good as he's taking there. MYM looking to start up this Dragon in all of the confusion right now, and the bottom lane going to join up. They might be able to secure that one, as the top lane turret will get taken by Elements. Dragon already about half health, so it looks like we'll see an objective trade.
So I actually quite like this, because if Elements wanted to start Dragon fights, it's very difficult and very scary against a Jarvan, a Leona, a Rumble, especially since they've all got their ultimates. So I like the thinking from Elements. They've got a lead, they've got a kill advantage. If they extend their gold lead, they can maintain that control once the team fights start breaking out, and you can undermine the power of MeetYourMakers team fight synergy if they're a full item behind or, you know, further down. You see Froggen's got an Abyssal Scepter completed, as well as that Fiendish Codex. In contrast, Corey, nothing completed yet. So I think smart decision making from Elements, and they've put themselves in a strong lead after 12 minutes.
Yeah, Elements are going to, they don't even have to slow and steady it so much when you've managed to build up about 3,500 ahead of your opponents at 11 minutes. Sure, they've given up the one Drake, but they got a tower for it. They have another tower on top of that as well. So really the next logical decision is to try and push down this bottom side. They don't even really need to pressure it as much though. Shook, he's been involved in these 2 kills so far, and Corey is going to be asking for a little bit of help here. Mimer hanging around the side as well. Wicked now pushing in the middle. Yeah,
just straight up laning. Elements are outperforming their opposite numbers. Just on an individual level. Wicked, more CS. You've got Froggen out CSing. Yes, he's had 2 ganks as well. Reckless and Nif have been extended, pushing very aggressively almost the entirety of this game. And even with Horo trying to gank, it hasn't worked out. But yep, Froggen, he wants Horo.
Yep, he's going to get the Frozen Tomb lock up there. Here comes Shook, and they will get Froggen a killing spree for this one. Can he get out as the exhaust is thrown down? Nisbeth trying to make a play. Shook picks up Corey in all of that as well. A 2 for 0 over to Elements, and you said it, Quick Shot. When you're able to outclass, you don't really need to do anything special.
Individually, they're just making the plays work. In the team comps, we said if Elements are able to one-on-one make the plays happen, the fact that you can't speed Rengar up becomes next to irrelevant, because Froggen found a target. He had the vision, he had the damage, and just completely blew Horo up. I mean, this is effectively a 3-on-3. There's enough members nearby, but it's 3 damage dealers from Elements. And Nisbet's Solar Flare only slowed Froggen. It didn't do anything more than that. Wicked joins the party a little bit late, but he did burn teleport. And one very important thing to note is Mimer used his TP for nothing. Used his TP, there was no dragon to take, there was no objective to push, and Wicked now has a teleport advantage.
Yeah, starting to scare MeetYourMakers out of this mid zone of the river here as they look to push in even further. Again, the extended laning phase in the bottom has really paid some serious dividends for Reckless. Not quite sitting on the infinity edge just yet, but the moment that Mr. Rallis tries to check out a little too far, he's going to run headlong into some serious danger. However, the rest of MeetYourMakers are here as well. It's actually, if it ends up being a crazy fight, it will be a 4v5, but also maybe 3 because Froggen's leaving, so they're going to back away from that.
Yeah, Mr. Rallis is sitting on a fair amount of money, hasn't backed in a long time, close to about 2k gold in fact. And he's just feeling the pinch. From very, very early on, Reckless and Nif played aggressively and just got enough damage down into Mr. Rolls that Nisbet was never really able to engage. And it's just, again, Elements are outclassing MeetYourMakers. So they've got this very traditional lead. We did see MeetYourMakers steal a blue buff earlier on, which we didn't necessarily call out, but it's very little solace when Elements are 2 towers up. They've given up a dragon, but they've got such a good global gold lead. And look at the grouping for MeetYourMakers. They may want to contest a fight, but it's going to be very difficult to pull off.
Yeah, very difficult indeed. There goes Nisbet's Solar Flare, but there is no follow-up available. Shook was making his way down. And again, MYM, they're just trying to grab a little bit of something, that blue steel included, but it seems like they don't have a clear-cut plan for how to deal with Elements. And this is still the early, now maybe the early mid-game. This is not typically when Elements is at their strongest.
15 minutes in, this is the most focused and concentrated performance from Elements. They had straight-up lanes, which they won. After Froggen had won his lane with some ganks from Shook, he moved to the top lane to help Wicked. Wicked had already won the duel. He 1v1 Mimer, forced him out of lane, and then Shook and Froggen grouped up, got a lot of damage, and the tower took it down. Hey, we've won that one. Let's group up bottom, go push that tower down. It's League of Legends by the numbers, and Elements are just doing everything. I mean, MeetYourMakers, they stood right on top of a ward. Hello. Let's see how long they wait.
Might be just a little bit of time. We'll have to get that.
Elements might want to fight. If Froggen gets here quickly enough, they're going to engage.
Yeah,
the fish is available, and MeetYourMakers, they're in trouble.
Oh, they scattered the wrong direction too. Mimer's going to be the jumped on target, throws down his equalizer, but all for naught. MYM totally scattered to the winds there.
You look at all the sweepers on the side of MYM, and look at they've got Gory.
My goodness, no follow-up just yet there. But man, that looked cool.
Spirit Rush, just too OP, manages to get away. Got the dashes available, but Elements, again, they had the vision, they knew where MYM was, and as soon as Froggen was close enough, Elements went for the engage. I'd actually say if Shook had maybe held Thrill of the Hunt and prevented that little exclamation mark showing up, maybe they could have gotten even more. But hell, I'm just being completely pedantic because this is a nearly perfect game from Elements so far. They've lost a dragon, but it was intentional. They made the decision not to fight so that they could take a tower instead, and that's why they've got a 7,000 gold lead.
Not to mention, they'll be in prime position to contest.
I think they're going to fight here, Pyra.
Looks like that is what they want to do. Nif, though, is going to run headlong into it. Reckless, though, he's in some trouble as well. It's a 2 for 2 so far, and there's nobody there to save them. They go a little bit too early. Nif taking a little bit low as well, and MYM do manage to get on the board this game. Horo is going to have to wait till his EQ comes back up, but Froggen keeping the abuse on.
So that was a well-played fight from MeetYourMakers because they chained all of their CC together. After Reckless landed from the knockup, that's when the Solar Flare came down. After Reckless flashed over the wall, that was when the Cataclysm came down. So MeetYourMakers just sequentially playing the 2v2 and using their CC effectively. So well played. We'll see if it gets them a dragon. They've set up fairly close by, but no Horo means it's a bit risky, so no smite.
It waited a little while too. Well, they could have had it while Reckless was over away at the fountain and respawning. Instead, they've let it sit for a little while, trying to opt to push the bottom side instead. Froggen is also here to defend, and he clears the wave with ease.
So Dragon has spawned. Elements have got a massive gold lead, which means MeetYourMakers should be very, very hesitant to try pick a fight here. But on the condition that you lock up multiple members of Solar Flare and you put an equalizer down on the ground, that could be the only way they pull themselves back in. But to claw back a 6,000 gold lead, MeetYourMakers have to punish mistakes from Elements or pull off absolutely godlike fights. And if MeetYourMakers are split up like this, it gets much more difficult. So keep an eye on the positioning.
Yeah, this is really curious. It seems like MeetYourMakers is a little indecisive about what to do. Same thing with Elements, though. They peel away from the dragon, so no fight just yet. But
initiation is on Shook and Froggen. That's how they start fights, and there goes Froggen.
Yeah, he's going to go forward, flash forward, Frozen 2, Mimer's the chosen target, down he goes. Launching the equalizer, but everyone else from MYM immediately bail out of that, and that's going to be the start of the dragon for Elements.
Yeah, and Elements are going to get this one uncontested. Whenever a fight is going to begin, Froggen or Shook throw down their flash, their glacial path, and they root a target in place, stun a target, get him locked down, and then everybody else just piles on. This is by far the most impressive performance Elements have had in 2015.
Yeah, we mentioned it before. Froggen saying that the early game prior was just not quite where they wanted it to be, but this has definitely changed things. Few mistakes, one catch, One given up dragon, but of course they got something for it in the end anyways. And 3 towers to none, 6 kills to 1, a dragon apiece, and how about a 7k gold lead on top of it? You can't really ask for much better than that.
No, you really cannot. Shook has done a good job of camping Froggen. Wicked's doing very well in the laning phase on his Gnar. And then a few questionable Gnar ultimates in previous games. This is actually his 3rd showing.
Yeah, well, they've won all their Gnar games. It's really
Yeah.
the only one that they lost, he was playing Aurelia.
Yeah, exactly. With the irony of that, right?
It's a bit ironic, yeah.
But yeah, times change, and Elements now looking more focused than they have before. Whenever you look at teams like Elements, like Fnatic, like SK Gaming, who are at the top of the table, you expect that they should be able to win games against the middle and the lower tier teams. MeetYourMakers very clearly in the middle to lower table bracket, sitting at 1 and 3. They've had to deal with that substitution. They've had to deal with Corey coming back. And it is difficult. It's something we were saying last week and something you guys cannot forget. Yes, Corey is their original starting mid laner, but he's been away for 2 weeks and he left in quite dramatic circumstances. So the team needs to rebuild that confidence in one another and rebuild that trust in one another's playstyle.
So far, they've had a little bit of trouble adjusting, and Corey's been kind of all by his lonesome, as you mentioned, for a lot of these situations. The ganks have not been helping out at all. Elements, though, going to be pushing on this 2nd tier top turret. A little bit of push from Rallis on the bottom, but he's going to back away. Actually, a teleport being spent by Wicked now just to force him off, and there's really not much MYM can grab back for this. Corey's going to try to do some damage to the middle turret, but there really isn't anything available.
No, there really, really isn't. And we've just breached the 20-minute mark. Elements have over 7,000 gold lead. In contrast to their previous largest gold lead was actually against Roccat, and they had a 3.6 thousand gold lead against Roccat. That game went on to be about 50, 60 minutes because Elements completely lost control. They were unable to close it out. They've got double the gold lead now. We need them to demonstrate that they can close more efficiently than they did against Roccat, and so far, they're being engaged on.
Yep, Solar Flare there, but there is no more follow-up available. Nisbeth doing all he can to try to get his team an open angle to engage, but it's so hard to fight when you're this far down in items, when you're not even quite in turret range, and it's just a little bit of a questionable use, even, I would say, of some of those ultimates, because they're not stacking them up.
No, they're not stacking them at the moment, and Elements haven't given up. They can also go for a tower dive because of the invulnerability that Froggen can give himself and the tankiness of Gnar.
Here we go, they jump on him. Where are the health bars of MYM going? That's already Corey, Rowles, Nisbeth all down in the blink of an eye, and Elements just like that, pushing in.
For the first time in 2015, Elements is performing to the level that they were expected to perform. This is decisive, it is clinical, it is clean. That tower dive was perfectly executed, and it has allowed Elements to take a 21.5-minute inhibitor.
Very, very early inhib for a team. Oh, well, they don't get it. Come on, guys, you gotta finish it up. There we go. Don't pat yourselves on the back just yet. Wicked finishes that one off, but all the same, still, stupendous performance from them in this game. Let's take a look at how that fight went down, because it was over really quick.
Yeah, it really did end instantly. Froggen comes from the sideline and actually locks up Nisbet of all targets, but mostly for the zoning, for that slow on multiple champions, and Wicked and Shook just dove. That was relentless and somewhat unexpected. I mean, they just came in completely on fire, and Elements, 10,000 gold lead. They've got super minions in the middle lane. It's going to be so difficult for MYM to clear those super minions because they don't have the damage to deal with them at the moment.
Yeah, and that's so early to grab it. I mean, we've seen a couple earlier inhibitors so far, but from a team like Elements, you don't even expect that quite so much. MYM going to look to grab a tower here just off the fact that they've got a big wave pushing in the top, but they have to get out of dodge pretty quickly, and maybe, yeah, recalling might be your best option, boys, because Elements are coming to get you.
Something that's also good to note from Elements is they don't have sort of wasted vision, so to speak. The whole time that pressure was going on in the middle lane, they had a few wards on the side. You had Froggen camping out by the wolf camp. So if MYM wanted to try any funny business, they were going to get caught out. So this is Shook trying to find somebody with Thrill of the Hunt. And that's what we talked about with you don't have that movement speed synergy. It's a bit more difficult to find somebody in the mid game. But you know what? None of that matters. And Reckless and Shook and the rest of Elements are proving that this team comp is working because they have just found everybody they want to blow up.
Yeah, absolutely everyone now. And very tanky across the board this composition is. They're really relying heavily on the sustained damage of Reckless and, of course, on Froggen to blow people up. And they just not giving MYM any breathing room whatsoever in this game. You know, MYM may not be the toughest opponent that Elements has faced this season so far. However, they're making it look far easier than we thought it was going to be going into this.
And they're exploiting their lead so much better than we've seen in the past. Elements realize they have this sort of tanky, this very strong team comp that you can put Gnar, Lissandra, and Rengar to dive, and you can allow Reckless to just sit and take down the tower. That inner turret was a perfect example of just great teamwork, because the entire comp was used to their advantage. Elements are going to take an uncontested dragon because MYM simply cannot pick a fight.
They don't even need to have all their members involved in it. Yeah, they send Braum back to the fountain. They go ahead and pick themselves up a second Drake of the game. Froggen goes up to the bottom to clear some waves as well away. And MYM just, they're struggling to really grab anything here. Yes, they're able to still control their own jungle more or less, but you can't push any of these objectives. You can't get involved in the dragon pit, and you can't fight. What can you do?
Yeah, the only reason MYM can control that blue buff in their jungle is because Elements let them. Elements opted to go for Dragon and move down. With one inner turret left, the plan for Elements will be to ward up, potentially use counter vision through those lenses, and actually remove the wards that MYM are putting down. So sweep them out, get MYM to either face check or to force an objective. If MYM stick around at this tower, Elements can simply just rinse and repeat their dives.
Yep, there we go though. Froggen is going to be targeted down. Nice tombs himself, and MYM trying to run in and save the day, but all they get for it is a dead Nisbeth. And the siege could continue here if Elements wants to take a charm on Shook. Not enough damage to follow up, and it continues.
So actually not the worst fight for MeetYourMakers, even though, yes, they did lose Nisbet. Look at all of the summoner spells that they blew from Elements. They got a lot of damage on Reckless, forced him back. Froggen was unable to really continually spam because he had to flash to safety as well towards the end. And MYM defend the tower. The problem is, you can't have a next to perfect team fight every time, and MeetYourMakers still lost Nisbet. So yes, they did okay, but they still lost a member, and Elements are coming out all right.
I think this just speaks to the power differential on all the teams here. Not only do you have a couple level advantages in play, the gold lead has translated into so much more damage for Elements that even in the worst possible situation for them, Froggen getting caught up in the middle, they blow a couple summoners, they don't lose a man. Yeah,
look at the itemization on your supports. I mean, you've got that Face of the Mountain on Nif already. So there's a shield, sorry, Targon's Brace, and the Aegis rather, already built. And Shook has got himself a Locket. So you're going to have those double auras. There's always going to be somebody in the aura. You're always going to be covered. And more importantly, if they can time their shields effectively, you're going to negate the burst that Corey's putting down. You're going to survive through that Equalizer more effectively. And you've got all of that innate tankiness from your champions already. Elements are just in a very good position.
Yeah, and you've got a hot source of AP, a hot source of AD that they just cannot simply touch at this point. Inhibitor comes back up, and Shook already jumping on Rallis. There's no one there to defend him. They've got the stun down. Nisbeth now turning the fight on him. That tower is barely poking him down. It finds Shook finally, and maybe they can turn this one around. Big shutdown. Horo, they're coming up with a little bit more damage, but Reckless says no, thank you very much. It is a 3 for 2 as Wicked's Mega Gnar is able to shove back the rest of MYM, but they are severely burned on this one, losing 2 members. However, it is Elements coming out ahead yet again.
Definitely worth it for Elements. They still win the team fight. They still get the inhibitor turret. And despite the fact that MeetYourMakers layered their abilities more effectively, this is a case of the 10,000 gold lead showing through. Look at Shook. He's coming in way from the back line. Throw the hunts up. And that's just such a decisive play. Once again, with the flash bowler engage, Reckless commits. We need to pay careful attention because where is this Equalizer here in a moment? It's going to come down. Cataclysm comes out. Just very well played from MeetYourMakers, sticking down the CC together. Finally, Equalizer comes up. Mima, maybe if it actually got that a little earlier, could have been even better. But, you know, a lot of praise for Horo. Got a good Cataclysm and still got some kills, but unfortunately it's just too little too late.
A lot of that, though, on the timing of Wicked's Mega Gnar, too, because if he hadn't got that, it looked for just a moment that MYM might have been able to turn a perfect fight, might have been able to defend it that one. It just didn't quite happen that way, and as it was, a 2 for 3, not the worst trade in the world, but they still lose a tower. They're losing ground every time, and you can't keep doing this. Eventually, you're going to run out of base.
That's actually a brilliant point. Eventually, you run out of base, then Elements have secured themselves their 4th win. It's hard for me to see how MeetYourMakers can claw back this lead. And you know, the big question that we had for both of these teams was, what's the mindset? How are the players going to perform? We thought Reckless was in a little bit more of a precarious position for Elements, and we thought Corey in a precarious position for MYM. Corey's pulled back the farm, but it's not a lot. That sounds like a lot of the hunt is on. Shook's not going to find anybody, I don't think. And he's just going to chill. Hashtag awesome.
Oh, there we go. Finds Rallis, has to back away immediately. Actually, they throw it on the Cataclysm and try and push him away from the Nisbeth, trying to front line, but he's not as tanky as he thinks. He goes down to Shook Corey, going for the assassination, pushed all the way back. Mimer gets his Zanyas on. Oro and Corey both a little bit low, Nip in the front. This inhibitor should go down in just a moment, but Elements deciding if they want to try to continue the fight first and poking it down. Not quite yet, actually. There it goes. Thank you, Reckless.
Reckless took so much time playing it safe there. He was dancing around the outskirts of the fight. Froggen actually peeled around in front of the base walls, and Reckless was moving with him. If maybe Reckless had been a little braver, they could have got more from that fight. But at the end of the day, Elements get the kill, they get the inhibitor, and yes, the tempo has slowed down, but they're still getting the objectives. Pay careful attention to Reckless's position. After they burst Nisbet down, you'll see MeetYourMakers engages from the side, and Reckless doesn't find a target. He obviously can't dash into Corey. There's an hourglass on Mimer, there's just nobody to shoot, and Reckless is going on a small little dawdle, so a little bit of indecisiveness, I think, on the team of Elements. But like we said, they get the kill, they get the objective. It's not too bad at the end of the day.
Hey man, sometimes you want to fight, sometimes you want to stretch your legs. It looks like that time Reckless took the second option, but Elements still, they have the leisure to be able to keep doing this one. Nisbet, they've found him so many times. He's generally been the sacrificial lamb for MYM, but this time, he's just caught out and hunted down. Froggen picking up his 5th kill of the game, now unstoppable at 5-0-8.
Shook's Rengar is very scary. I don't think he's missed a baller strike. Every time we've seen him, he's jumped on a target, he's rooted a target. He's not needed any assistance from the rest of his team because he's simply proficient enough at finding the targets. With Nisbet's engaged down for the next 15 seconds, the risk of the Solar Flare Cataclysmic Equalizer is impossible because it's not
cool
there. So, Elements should be able to secure this inhibitor if they stick around. But again, look how safe they're playing. They're not risking getting caught out.
A little wishy-washy, and you did mention that they have some, whoa, I'll have to talk about that in a minute. Rallis nearly going down. There he goes. Froggen, Zanya's on. Big Gnar, Wicked trying to make the fight happen for his team, and it looks like they will be able to do. Mimer's still sticking around. Nisbet comes back up and goes back down. It's a double kill. Going over to Reckless. They've grabbed the inhibitor, and they're going to back away. But as you've been saying before, they've had troubles closing in the past, and they're not going to go for it this time.
No, still afraid of the Ahri and the Rumble on the side of MeetYourMakers. But with super minions pouring down through the lanes, I think it's going to give them the option to go for the Baron or the Dragon, something else. And, you know, it's a slightly extended team fight, but what really signals this go signal is Corey using his Spirit Rush. Once you know that that's active and it's not an aggressive play, Froggen dives in, locks up a target, hourglasses to stay alive, and Elements just one by one systematically destroyed. Reckless still completely safe from the backline. Nobody's able to find him because nobody from MeetYourMakers can get through that very aggressive diving team of Elements.
Yep. Dragon will be secured. Actually secured by Nif. Shook a little early on that smite. It's a little hasty. It's about the only thing Elements is hasty in. But they do take Dragon number 3 for themselves. A little bit more movement speed, and now they're eyeballing this inner turret on the bottom side. Corey trying to go in, dashes right into Froggen, and he actually dashes just out of the Frozen Tomb, but Reckless is still going to pick a kill onto Mimer while Rallis is away. The Elements will play, and they should be able to secure this turret, no problem.
Yeah, Quicksilver Sash keeps Corey alive, but unfortunately for Mimer, there was still a few seconds on that equalizer before he could throw it down. So he gets dropped instead. Elements, again with the numbers advantage, you're just going to push in. There's super minions in the top half of the map, so Elements are going to have more tools to play with, and this could be the game-winning push if they find any more kills.
This would be one of their quicker games indeed. 32, almost 33 minutes on the board. They've got 2 inhibitors. Now they look to secure the 3rd. They do pick it up. MYM still running out of base here. They are in some serious trouble as the super minions start to fire down on the Nexus turrets. 1 going extremely low. This is the desperation push. Horo coming in. They tag out with Nisbeth. They've got some damage, but it's not quite enough. And Nisbeth very, very low, getting blown up by Reckless. MYM desperately trying to defend their base, their game. Can they keep it going as Mimer puts his Zanyas on? They've pushed Elements back, but for how long has death been staved off?
It's just a matter of time. One Nexus turret actually gets dropped thanks to those super minions hammering away. MeetYourMakers are dejected. If you actually look at the player cams, Mr. Riles and Nisbet, Stonewalls, Mimer's actually smiling away, but the rest of them just really not in there. So Elements going to be able to get pushed backwards. At the end of the day, MeetYourMakers are trying. They're trying to find their team fights. The problem came in that they just gave up way too much in the laning phase. Unfortunately, because MeetYourMakers fell so far behind, it doesn't really matter what Elements do in these team fights. It's only an Elements mistake that will give MYM a kill. Because 15k gold difference, look at the item differences between these two team comps. There's very, very little that MeetYourMakers can do, unfortunately.
I feel like this is the definition of a slow and very painful death for MYM. They can still come back in this game, but it is just such a march uphill. They've got one inhibitor back, and as soon as it comes, Elements are right there to take advantage. They found Horo, and Corey is there as well to tag in. Nif going a little bit low despite his tankiness, but they just can't check into this team, and inhibitors dropped once again.
That was an insta QSS from Corey. Really good reaction time. I think the root actually did land from Shook, but Corey insta got away. Doesn't matter. Super minions pouring through. Elements are going to focus down the Nexus turrets, and then the Nexus. This is the final push.
Yeah, they're going to try to jump onto Nif as well, but Wicked is distracting the entire backline. Froggen picks up yet another kill. They found Horo. They found the whole team. They finally found the win. 35 minutes in. Elements pick up number 4.
Very little to add except domination from the laning phase, from the ganks. Even from the doubts of Rengar not having assistance, you know, other teams have not pulled it off. Elements did. That is the best play we've seen from them individually and from their team in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, I think it's really hard to fault them in that case. Still playing a little bit safe, probably overly so when they were so far in the lead, but we've seen them do this against any number of opponents, and it worked out just fine for them this time around. 35-minute victory.
I would say yes when it comes to pushing the inhibitors. You know, that team fight that we replayed of sort of reckless diving in and out, I would say maybe they could have focused an objective of the champions a little more. But up until the inhibitor turrets, they tower dove ruthlessly. They forced fights ruthlessly. And if I were SK Gaming watching this match, I'd be nervous tomorrow because this is a scary looking Elements. And Elements versus SK to end the day tomorrow is really going to show off who is deserving to be at the top of this table.
Absolutely. After a win like that, you definitely got to start sweating it a little bit if you're the